Internet baby.
People who experience Mandela effect, how did it felt like? I had this thought ever since I was 15. What if death doesn't actually exist in the way we all think it does? You know how we can apparently see our entire life in just 40 seconds? Years of memories being remembered in mere seconds. This is all happening in the process of dying. So listen to this. You're dying. Your brain is just processing your entire life for you again. Since this is just a memory, it might be wrong. This is why we get deja vu. It's because it all already happened. Who knows how many times? With each time you die in your memories, you get looped back to the 40 seconds. Creating more memories, while also disorienting other memories. Which is why you're able to change things, or why certain things might not make sense to you. You're living through your 40 seconds. When you die in those 40 seconds, you get looped back into them. Like a memory inside a memory. A paradox in a way. Makes sense. My cousin died in a car accident in 1994. His high school band recorded the song Time of Your Life by Green Day to have it played at his funeral. My entire family, including his brothers and his parents, remember that song being played because it was his favorite song, and Green Day his favorite band. They even remember having a family discussion before the funeral about whether to let it be played because of its actual name, Good Riddance. That song came out in 1997. There is no way it could be the same song. I live in New Zealand. I have very vivid memories of walking into the lounge in the morning that 9/11's happened and watching it unfold on TV before I went to school. It was in the second or third house we lived in after my mom and dad broke up. I've always had this vivid memory of being in that house when it happened and watching it unfold. A few years ago I realized that I was 7 in 2001 when it happened and my parents hadn't broken up, meaning we were still living in our first family home that my parents owned. I asked my mom what house we were living in when 9/11's happened. She said the same house that I have the memories of, but it can't have been that house. Shit's fucked. It's been fucking me up for a few years now. Pikachu 100% had a brown stripe on the top of his tail. I drew that yellow fucker 100s of times as a kid, and they all had brown stripes on the top of his tail. This is a hill I'm willing to die on. What the this one has baffled me. I'm with you 100%, Pikachu had a brown tail tip. I'm in my mid-30s, so remember the original Pokemon hype very well, and my little brother was obsessed. I didn't even know there were Pikachus going about in the world without a brown tail tip until I saw this. This is just a little story, but it still freaks me out. I have this house that has a big fence around the outside, and I have been living in this house for half a year now and always use the same gate handle. One day me and my mother were leaving to go do something and I was looking at the handle to close the gate when I saw these little letters engraved on it saying "Have a good day." This freaked me out so bad because it'd like to think I'm quite observant of my house and would have noticed this. When I told my mom, what surprised me was what she actually responded with. I expected her to say something like, "Oh, that's been there literally forever. How did you now see that?" etc. But instead she just paused for a second, looked at it, and calmly replied with, "Huh, I guess it does," and kept walking. But I was dying on the inside. How could I have never noticed this? It really freaks me out, and I still have a picture of the writing on it, if anyone is curious. Goddamn Berenstein Bears. I remember asking my mom how to pronounce Berenstein when I was learning to read, because I was confused by the A. At that age I would have definitely been able to read Stain. It was for sure Berenstein. The Fruit of the Loom logo never having had a cornucopia really fucks me up. I like to randomly ask friends and loved ones to describe the Fruit of the Loom logo for me, then we can determine whether they also come from the cornucopia timeline. I have a distinct memory of seeing the cornucopia as a child and wondering what it was. It confuses me that a lot of people are in the same boat. The dash between kid and cat never existed. I am questioning reality. The Billy Graham dying twice is what freaked me out. I have a very clear memory of watching his funeral procession on TV in my mother's kitchen in the early 2000s. I didn't even know the guy, and I'm not religious at all. I had asked her if he was one of those TV preachers. She said, yes, but he's one of the good ones. When he actually did die in 2018, I emailed my mom and asked if she had that same memory about him already dying. She did not remember, but she did say he's one of the good ones is exactly what she would have said about Billy Graham. One of my former classmates had a Mandela effect about me. She got hired at my workplace. When she learned that I work there, she started telling everyone about the time I dressed as a bottle of shampoo for Halloween. It was a favorite memory of hers. She thought it was such a clever and funny costume. Except I never wore it. It was a different classmate of ours. She didn't even look like me. I'm a chubby brunette, and Shampoo Girl was a skinny blonde. She also had a twin brother who dressed as the conditioner. I have a theory that Mandela effects are caused by the brain taking shortcuts while encoding rarely accessed memories. Non-South Africans conflated Steve Biko with Nelson Mandela. Stein is a far more common suffix than stain. The catcher's tail is in line with his years. In middle and high school I became well known as an artist, so my classmate naturally attributed this art-themed memory to me. I remember seeing a video on TMZ around 2011 of Ted Nugent firing arrows into a dummy with Obama's face on it. It was one of his concerts and he would alternate between playing guitar and letting a few bolts fly. The dummy was fabric, a plain white color, and had a photo, I'm guessing 8x10, of Obama pin stapled to the face. The closest that I can find is him shooting flaming arrows into a guitar on stage, but that video is inside a venue and had no Obama dummy. The one I remember was outdoors, no fire arrows were involved, and it was recorded by someone in one of the first few rows. Literally remembering watching Mandela's funeral on TV when I was a kid. Always thought he was dead, so when I was told he passed I was like, yeah, I know, he's been dead for years. It's one of my earliest memories, but I distinctly remember it because it was the first time in my life that I'd heard about a celebrity dying back then. So it really stuck with me ever since, still does. Scared the shit out of me to see that I wasn't the only one though. Sinbad played a genie in a movie called Shazam. The movie doesn't exist. I remember the VHS case at the video store and everything. It was a parody of Chasm that came out within a year. I swear, people think I'm trolling when I say it, but I vividly remember this movie. I even remember it airing on USA Midday on weekends a few times. It does my head in to think that it's just some kind of shared delusion. I went to my grandparents' house because I thought their extremely elderly dog, 18 at the time, probably 19 now, died, and I wished to console them. Nope. She's still alive. That was one awkward conversation. The JFK assassination got me. I remember 4 people in the car, not 6. Holy shit, I thought there was 4 people. And to think I read all about it. There had to have been more than 4. There was JFK and Jackie, and Governor Connolly and his wife. So at the very least there would have had to be a driver. Bought pickles for my husband today. He was puzzled that the brand name was Clausen instead of Clausen. Berenstein Bears, of course. One of my favorite series as a kid, and I was also obsessive about pronouncing things correctly. Word phonics made sense to me, and I always thought Berenstein when I read it. Also, chartreuse. This is a random one. I would have sworn that it was maroon. I remember having a conversation with a classmate that a dress for graduation was called chartreuse, which is the same thing as maroon, our school color. I remember seeing it in the catalog. Yes, I'm old. Years later I find out it's this ugly yellow-green color. I didn't think much of it until I read some thread on the Mandela effect sub a few years ago when I first got on Reddit, and someone said the same thing. Always struck me as odd. Okay, this is kind of a strange one and personal to me, but I have multiple extremely distinct memories of my grandmother keeping a tiny jar of mayonnaise just behind the petrol cap of her car. I distinctly remember this. On multiple occasions, if we were in her car and she ever stopped for petrol, she would always open the lid. I'd see her take out this tiny jar of mayonnaise, and then she would start filling the tank. I have memories of this happening up to the age of maybe 6. A couple of years later I mentioned this to my mum, no idea why, it just came up, and she gave me the biggest stink eye ever, then burst out laughing. 90% of the time if I was in my grandmother's car, she would be there too, and she even filled up the tank a few times, so she would have definitely known if there was a tiny jar of mayonnaise behind the petrol cap of her mother's car. I of course realize how ridiculous this is now, but at the time I was so young, and didn't eat mayonnaise, that I just never thought to question it. I absolutely remember reading an article that said Melania Trump spoke very little English. This was in the early Apprentice days. I remember remarking to my husband that the relationship must not have much substance if they cannot communicate. Did they mime everything to each other? I know I read it, but the only articles I can find say Melania Trump is fluent in several languages, including English. So either I experienced the Mandela effect, or someone did a very good job of cleaning the internet.